Let's continue taking a look at the market picture. I'm joined by Warwick Lucas from Galileo Capital. Thanks so much for your time on SABC News. US equities having a good week, rallying and reaching record highs. What's leading to that?
Okay, so I think the market clearly liked the testimony of Chairman Powell to Congress. I think key takeaways from that were, firstly, if he was ever going to put the brakes on a rate cut, it would be now. Well, that clearly didn't happen, so I think we can take it as pretty much rubber stamped that in the next little while the Fed is going to cut rates. But over and beyond that, he spoke about the Fed looking at new taking a new structural view as to what stable unemployment figures would look like, and taking a revised view on just what a steady state level would look like. So, for example, for a long time, 5% was viewed as the absolute limit. I mean, we've been well below that now for quite some time, and I think there's a revised appreciation that there needs to be a different way to look at the issue.
We look to the States a lot as the world's biggest economy, whether it's what they're discussing on interest rates, and more recently, this thing of tariffs by US President Donald Trump. He seems to be very fond of them. He's now warning France. They've implemented this digital tax, that there might be tariffs because of that. What's happening there? Just explain to us. All
right, so it's actually been a bit of a long-rolling issue by the States and relative to Europe, I must add. I mean, the EU for quite some time has been trying to come up with a framework for the taxation of these foreign tech companies, and got quite a long way, and then it all fell in a heap last year. So the approach being taken here is that the US is looking at what France is doing, which is basically unilateral, but not unusual, because the UK is also lining similar legislation up in the pipeline as well. But they are looking very serious about it. They are using the same legislation that is used to kick off the US-China trade war. So they do mean some business by it, but it's a long drawn-out process. And in the meantime, France, for its part, has said, well, this is a temporary measure, and if there's some international agreement on the whole issue, we'll streamline into that as and when it arises. So it's quite a complicated issue.
Yeah. Would US imposing taxes on the EU have the same kind of effect that the tariffs on China have had on the global markets?
Okay, so the actual numbers that are involved are really relatively small.
Okay.
So the key issue is as long as it doesn't get out of control.
Okay. Let's take a look at someone who has felt the brunt of US President Donald Trump in Washington. Huawei has unveiled its first 5G enabled smartphone. What will that do, and will it counter some of the backlash that Huawei's had because of those sanctions from the US and because they can't go to the US like they could before?
Okay, so nothing's guaranteed in life, but I think certainly positioning yourself to be a leader is absolutely critical for Huawei, whether or not it's actually successful. I mean, I often refer to the old cliche example of VHS versus the beta video, and you know, having the best product is never a guarantee of actually dominating the space. But clearly, it's a very important move that Huawei had to make in order to keep pace in this race.
Another story that I find very interesting, which has to do with companies, is Amazon spending about $70 million on upskilling 100,000 of their staff members or retraining them. Just talk to us about that. Is it going to have an impact on their share price, on the way people look at their company and its valuation generally? Okay,
so short term, not any real impact per se, but it's actually 100,000 staff members that they're looking to train there. It's a process of upskilling vast amounts of their staff to be able to operate on higher level jobs. So clearly they're seeing a higher and higher level of automation and artificial intelligence and so on threatening existing jobs in the business, and one of the ways in which they'll address that is that through growth of the business they will be able to find employment for a lot of those staff, but at a different level.
Perhaps a lesson to be learned by some South African companies and
Very
something to
much so.
implement there. So yesterday, SABC CEO wrote a letter about the many challenges that the company is facing, and Blue Label Telecoms, which has about a 45% share in SABC, their share price was battered. What's happening today and what's their response been to that?
Okay, so just to give some background on that, I mean, in essence, what is happening there is that SABC needs some new rounds of funding, and I mean, given the kinds of corporate scandals that we've seen in South Africa recently, trust is a very important ingredient in any kind of financing arrangement that happens these days. So, what in essence is going on there is that the CEO said, look, right, we're going to open ourselves up to some thorough examination, and this is a prelude, I guess, to basically then putting yourself out for some extra funding. So it doesn't mean to say that there is anything specifically that's untoward there, but there's a process of tire kicking to make sure there is nothing untoward there.
Okay, so Telkom and BCX, their triple BE certification improved from level 2 and level 1 respectively. Do shareholders and investors generally care about transformation and improvement like that when it comes to companies?
In the tech space particularly, yes. Most of these type of companies, being capital light, have been able to be relatively successful in introducing BE and transformation, and quite frankly, for a tech company to not have a significant level of BE and transformation is in fact a big negative. So in that space, there's no question the market looks for it, and it's a big plus.
Thanks so much for your time on SABC News. Warwick Lucas from Galileo Capital giving us some insight into what's happening with company and other news.